Hey guys, how are you? We're live. How you doing? We are live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube also. And it's a pleasure to be here, guys. Happy Monday, as we call it. And this one's going to be basically, I'm going to try to be consistent with this. It's going to be also a podcast. I called it CRE SharkEye. That's what I called it. Going to be a podcast. Obviously not live, but the podcast is going to be. I'm going to publish it right after this thing. I'm going to talk on Monday. I'm going to try to talk about the market outlook of commercial real estate and try to dig into that a little bit more of serious stuff and content and and discussion and stuff like that. And once I'm done talking, and I have a lot to say, if you guys know me already. Once I'm done talking, I'm going to start trying to bring guests into this little show. But right now, what I want to discuss today basically is office. I want to jump right into it. And I apologize if I'm not polite saying, hey, you, etc. to all the people who come live. As most people usually don't see it live. They see it as a replay or they listen to a podcast. That's the way it is. So I just want to jump right into it. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about because, when you talk about office, everybody's confused. Everybody sort of knows what's going on with hotels. Everybody knows what's going on with hospitality that is in trouble. And everybody knows that this asset class is really trying to pivot right now and everybody's talking about the conversions. That's for a different type of a live that I'm going to make. And everybody's talking about retail that is in trouble, and many things that are going on with retail. And everybody's trying to understand what type of retail is going to come up. That's a different type of show. But office, everybody's confused. Multifamily is considered to be the safest asset class that everybody knows. Everybody's aware of that. The question is, what's happening with office? Where are we going with that? And where are we going to be? So interesting. So an article, basically, can't remember where I saw it, but I saw the article. And it says, and it's trying to compare the whole idea of office to 2008 and everything that happened then. So everything that happened then. So in 2008, the losses, in terms of the value, in terms of valuations of property, went down 25 to 30%. It was very heavy. And bear with me for a second because I'm going to talk about this a little further. And what is the major difference, in my opinion, at least, when it comes to 2008 and COVID. A lot of huge differences. It's not the same thing, okay? A lot of people talking about worrying signs. Worrying signs. What does that mean? Worrying signs. Does that mean you have to be negative? Does that mean you have to be scared and and go and hide like a rabbit? What does that mean, really? Worrying signs. But at the same time, you see CBRE. Their whole outlook about this, they see that things are going to come back. Okay, they're looking at things and they think that things are coming back. How come? They're talking about per square foot. Okay, the price per square foot at $35 per square foot prior to COVID, and post-COVID, meaning not post-COVID, but during COVID, I would call it COVID during COVID, went down to $33 per square foot. And they see that 2022, things are going to bounce back to 35. So this is one thing. Another thing that they're talking about is about vacancies. Something interesting to talk about. Vacancies. Vacancies are 12% prior to COVID. And in the midst of COVID, it goes up, meaning vacancy go up to 15%. But the prediction is that they will go down, bam, and they go down again to 12%, and everything is going to get better. So everybody's confused. And soon you're going to see why everybody's confused. Because on one hand, everybody's worried what's going to happen. And on the other hand, we see here a sort of a positive outlook that things are going to actually get better and better, and things are going to get nicer and nicer. So everybody's happy about that. So this is a positive thing to look at, right? Now let's look at the flip side for a second. We're talking about being confused, okay? Being confused now, it's It's unbelievable, because we see in all kind of markets, we see vacancies. We see vacancies and all kind of tryouts by landlords who have those offices or they're doing development and they got all kind of financing for that development. They're trying to sublease it, okay? They're trying to sublease it in all kind of, and they're trying the market. They're trying the market. They're trying to see what the market will bring. But the vacancies are at a peak. And at the same time, they're trying all kind of things. Now, you would tell yourself, okay, cool. Vacancies are up. Prices will drop, right? Prices will drop. Answer is no. Prices drop a little bit, but not tremendously, because the landlords are looking at it as a time to sort of, how do you say, pivot with what they have, but hold on to what they have, negotiate with the lenders, trying to see what they can get out from the lenders, what they can do with the lenders. The funny thing is that the loans have risen, meaning there are more loans, 25% more loans with institutions that are not banks, okay? Not banks, non-banks in the sector. The loans have grown tremendously to 25%. So this is something that, on one hand, again, we see optimistic views to 2022. Everything will be back. Everything will be great. And at the same time, we see not really. Vacancies are growing and everybody's worried and everybody's talking about, social distancing, and therefore they're going out of the urban area to the rural areas and stuff like that. So there are all kind of theories and talks about what is really true and right for this sector. Another interesting aspect, and this is something that I really like, that is an aspect of looking at why are certain offices taking a larger space. Why certain landlords are taking larger space. Why are they taking larger space? They're taking larger space because they want it for social distancing, obviously. So if they want it for social distancing, it means that they need larger space. It means that they need more space. It means that that's optimistic view for offices. The one thing I hear far and wide I hear it, and that is not from reading and not from seeing materials, but from talking to people. And that's not landlords, because everybody who's in commercial real estate, every CRE person that you talk to is trying to be optimistic. That's our nature. We're trying to say things are going to be great. We're going to get better because we believe in that and we are optimistic. That's what makes us what we are, and that's what got us into this business. We have to be realistic. We are realistic many times. But again, when it comes to our sector, we always try to see how to, and that's a good thing, by the way, try to be optimistic and try to see the way out of a bad place. But talking to the tenants or potential tenants or professionals, those who rent the offices, that is, I think, a key for something. This is really key. And what's the deal with that? And the deal with that is that a lot of people looking at their home office all of a sudden, and they saying, okay, that was cute. Enough with that. We need to do something else. We need to go elsewhere. We need to start going back to the office. Why? Because people start remembering, they start looking back at the beautiful times they had in the office, talking to people, talking to colleagues, having the office environment. It's not the same. It's just not the same. Staying at home and working at home is great, and you could have Zooms all you want and all that stuff. But how about sitting in an office, seeing what the people who work for you, what they do, or seeing what your colleagues do and brainstorming about things? And that's how business is being done. And people start missing that. So that is something that when we have an outlook for what the future holds, human nature will bring us back to the office, according to all those people who are going to rent. So it is true to be positive. It is the right thing to be positive, and it is the right thing to be positive. It is we have to do that. We have to look at it as something that will go back, because COVID will not stay forever. Okay, so this is something we have to think about. So just a couple of things that I saw here that are very, very, very interesting. Okay, there's in Tampa Bay. I saw in Tampa Bay a historical high sublease. Okay, those guys are trying to take a 1.4 million square foot and try to sublease it. Okay, and all of a sudden you have all these leasings coming out to the market, and everybody is talking about this. There's so many vacancies, so many availabilities, and this is, I guess, the time to get it. But at the same time, again, you think you're going to get a bargain. You're not going to get a bargain, because those guys who are leasing it to you believe, and some say rightfully so, that the market will come back. Why should I give you a great price while I think or believe or know, at least in my opinion, that within a year and a half things will change? I can give you a sort of I can make you a nice deal. Okay, I can make some concessions, as we call it, to come and have this special type of term in the lease, that within the next few months you're not going to pay, or you're going to pay less, etc., etc. But in the long term, my per square foot price, as well as the price increase the annual increase in the lease is going to stay, is going to be there, and the lease is not going to change. So we're seeing all that happening, and that's really, really interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. So again, if we're looking at the predictions, we don't really know what will happen. I just want to jump for a second, just for another thing. At the same time, we see the deals are happening. We see lenders that are jumping in and they're financing this. They're financing developments. They're financing acquisitions, and things are kicking. Things are happening. So what is the outlook for this type of market? The outlook is that, first of all, we don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is, but we definitely have to look out for different type of offices. People will go back to the office. The question is, how fast will they go to the urban areas, to the center, to the prime locations that we used to know as prime location, which will be prime location in the future. The question is when and how fast. But one thing is for sure, that going out of home and coming back to an office, it doesn't have to be in the prime location office, but it will be an office. So in suburban areas, if you have offices that are going to be leased, they're going to be leased first, and there's more chance for social distancing and the ability to work that way. Okay, having all that said, you have big companies, large companies in New York City that you see that are taking their own buildings with an amazing initiative, and they studied this whole COVID thing in depth, and they understand that they can go and create an environment of social distancing within offices in those large buildings, even though there's one elevator, etc. But they have managed to create the entrance, a certain type of entrance, and using and utilizing different type of technologies in order to accommodate those tenants that will come in and being able, to use those offices. So all this is doable. All this is being, it's live, it's real. Things are happening, and offices are not dead. That's 100%. They're not dead. And another thing about the comparison to 2008, it's very important to talk about this. Very important to talk about, because everybody's trying. All those people who see people who see all kind of calamities and bad things that are happening, and the sky is falling, and being a little chicken, as we call it, they are trying to compare the market to 2008. It's not 2008. It's a different type of environment. And the reason is the banks are a lot more resilient. The banks are stable. It's not the same. The banks prior to 2008 were reckless. The banks are a backbone of an economy, and right now they are not in a bad place. So therefore, we can rely on them to hold us through this, pandemic, as we call it, and to go and to get through and to have a better life with it. So, you know what? It's something that we don't know. But on one hand, you have this guy with an office, and his tenants are, they're still there. And that one thing has to be sure. We have to discuss this. This is something that we have to talk about. That tenants that are, the core, the anchor tenants, the corporations, government, all these guys, they're not moving anywhere. Even if they're not there, the lease is still there. The lease is still there, still paying. Large corporations are not going to take 3 floors in one large building and they're going to start moving around. Now, firms, which are the second tier, I would call it, as the anchor in the food chain of office lease. Also them, they're not going to move that fast. They're not going to decide to move that fast, even though they are more flexible and they could decide, okay, we'll take our firm and we'll do it there and we'll do this. And maybe they will negotiate with the landlord in a certain way. So you have, if you have an office building, even if it's in a prime location, a place that everybody's now running away from because of the pandemic, if that tenant mix that you have is a good tenant mix that, incorporates a large corporation or a government or whatever it is, and then has few large firms, and only then you have those moms and pops and few little offices, et cetera, because these guys are the guys that are going to negotiate with the lease, because these guys are the people who don't need an office and will come and say, I'm not using the office, I don't want to be there. Anyways, I'm not paying that much, and or I don't want to pay that money because for me it's a lot of money, and that's it. Then they're going to come and say, listen, we have to think differently. We have to do things differently. We have to get out of here. So if, let's say, a person, if let's say there's a landlord who has an office space, and think about it, he has 60-70% of those moms and pops, those small offices, little tiny firms, small offices, these guys are going to come in and negotiate. Or they're going to come and say, goodbye, sayonara, I can't pay rent anymore. I don't have any income. Or I fired half my staff, because I can't work that way. This is, a lot of people got hit because of the pandemic, and that's the way it is. But if a landlord has 70 or 80%, even 60% of good anchor, good tenant mix, as we call it, he has those big corporations, those large firms, and they're still there. They're still paying, even though they're not attending the office. And there's certain concession, maybe telling them, listen, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, but I'm going to come back. You're not going to see a major drop in the lease. You're not going to see a major drop in the NOI. So a lot of offices are still standing out there. And there's a reason why retail was dropped 70%. Retail was dropped 70% in the income, the rent income. But in office, it was not as high. In office, it was still high. It got to, in some places, it got to 20%. Some places it got to 30%. But in some places, it got only to 10%. It's not only, it's a lot, but it got to 5%, 7%. But these are numbers that we take into consideration when it comes to a pro forma and NOI. Comparing this to, what happened to hospitality, comparing it to what happened to hospitality, where everybody's predicting, let's say if it's in hospitality, you always say worst case scenario. Let's say for example, not worst case scenario. Let's say, for example, in a classic hospitality situation, you take the occupancy at around 75% up to 85%, and in the peak season, 95%, but in average, it's going to be around the 70-something, okay? So that is going to be that way. But let's say worst case scenario would be 45%, 35%. It got down to zero. Who predicted that, and that's what brought it to the, brought it down. But in office, it didn't happen. So if it was down 7% or 10%, it was still bad, but that's something that could be taken into consideration when you make, a risk assessment. When it comes to 30%, that's already pretty major, but that's not catastrophe to certain people. Also, it really depends on the type of financing and the type of leverage people took on themselves when they got and acquired those properties. So that is important to take into consideration. Again, to sum it up, we don't know, but we have to keep, a hand on the pulse and try to see where things are going. At the same time, we can't look at office asset class and say it's gone. People are not going back to the office. That's wrong. That's not true. It's going to be a different type of environment, but maybe people will go back to the prime locations with different settings. We don't know that yet. We don't know how fast, we don't know how slow, but for sure, people will go back to the office because there's a need and people miss the office. They miss the environment of office, especially the owners, the entrepreneurs, the owners, the business owners. They want their people around them, even for a few times a week, if not the whole week, but a few times a week in order to be able to brainstorm and grow their business. That's a part of the game plan of any business. So they will be fat. I believe that they'll be going to the office pretty fast. Which office, where office? Obviously, more in the rural areas, the suburban areas, those type of places. So that is it. Guys, take care of yourselves. See you next time.